Hey everyone, I'm Alan Shimel.
And I'm Mitch Ashley.
And you're listening to
DevOps Chats.
Again.
Mitch,
you know what I realized? So many of our friends who do podcasts, they have like episode numbers, episode 47, episode 23. I feel like I'm watching the Blacklist. We never really did the episode number thing.
No, we didn't. I think it's just because we did it as we could, and I figure the numbers will take care of themselves, right? It'll be in the order they're in.
I guess. Maybe we should just go on the date. And we should have someone, maybe one of the interns or something, who count up how many chats we have just for the heck of it.
I think we use
Stardate.
Maybe
we'll get a number.
Should we use Stardate? It's just
we can use Stardate. Yep. Engage. Anyway, so Mitch, I was doing some TechStrong TV interviews today on TechStrong Gang with you, and it occurs to me, 10, 15 years ago, if I would have talked to you about my co-pilot, you would have thought I was flying a plane.
Exactly. Yeah.
And today, it's amazing how quickly it's kind of moved into the vernacular that a co-pilot is the AI assistant that helps you use a particular piece of software. And I truth be told, and I'll say this, I first heard the term around Microsoft products, GitHub, Office 365, what have you. And to me, it was almost like, oh, this is a new Clippy. But it's not the new Clippy. It's so much more. Yeah. It's so much more than that. But still, it's that, person in me. But what we've seen is Copilot has become like Xerox, right? It's a term that's passed into the culture. It doesn't belong to any one company. And it just means an AI assistant, and it seems like every DevOps tool vendor out here, of course, the whole spectrum of DevOps and even cloud native tools are coming out with copilots. And, we had this discussion on the gang. How many copilots are enough? Cockpits aren't that big. How many copilots do I need? And do I need a pilot to rule all my copilots?
Yeah, that's why we have a pilot. I will note to your analogy we used on TechStrong Gang, which is airplanes only have one co-pilot. You don't have 20 co-pilots on the plane.
There's one pilot and one co-pilot.
Yeah, I think that can get by. Copilot is sort of the low-hanging fruit of Gen AI right now. That's the easy way to, it's the next step up from after chatbot. But the challenge is, you're right, how many do we need? Every product has a copilot, not just DevOps tools, but every product, every application we're using now either has or will have a copilot. And first of all, I don't want to pay $20 or $30 a month for every one of those, right? So which ones do you want and need? Now, if you're doing development, the GitHub, Microsoft Copilot probably makes sense. But there's others. There's testing, there's security tools, there's a lot of tools that have copilots. And each one they aren't the same copilot. They're their own LLMs and interface and prompt engineering to use each one of them. So it's like train yourself on how to use 10 different search engines when I just want to know how to use one. Same thing for copilots. I don't want to know how to use all 10 of them. If they're all different, just make it easy. I'd really just want
absolutely.
One or a few.
Yeah. I just did an interview with Scott Erlanger. Scott's the Director of Product Marketing DevOps at Tricentis. And they recently made an announcement. They came out with Copilot.
They did.
Well, at least for one of their product lines, and darn if I remember one right now, but which one it was right now, but it's on my interview on TechStrong TV. But in any event, to your point, it's an upcharge, right? It doesn't come by default with the product, and you need to, it's an option. I don't know for how long it'll be an option. I think it becomes table stakes, and people are just going to expect it as part of it. They're not going to want to pay extra for it sooner than later, right? So
remember when you used to buy a spell checker? This is a long time ago, right? We would
absolutely
buy a
remember that. Yeah, I do
spell
remember
checks
that,
and everything.
actually.
We don't pay extra for that. So I think that's, I agree. You and I are on the same trajectory, which is eventually this is
Absolutely.
baked in, right?
It has to be baked in. But I'm also wondering is I want to get familiar with just one interface, one voice. Is my co-pilot the same AI all the time? And I just plug it into different back ends depending on what app I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But I only have to kind of learn one. I only have to learn to deal with one co-pilot.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if there's a good analogy, but eventually you want one co-pilot, one AI interface that will talk to the other co-pilots of the tools that you're using. And it knows how to take your prompt that you wrote and customize it for how that specific LLM is engineered for prompts, right? Instead of you learning how to do it for every individual LLM, it seems like that's kind of the real assistant you want is, I don't really care where it comes from. I just want one way of querying, asking, requesting things to get done. Whatever it looks like, and let it interpret it for me into the right format for a downstream LLM.
Agreed. Mitch, I get that each one of these co-pilots, because each of these applications that I'm using is its own program, its own, I don't know if you want to use the word platform, its own thing, and they don't necessarily bleed over. But I just are we thinking this through, or are we just mad rushing in at AIing everything? Right? In terms of what's the end user? You know what I mean? It reminds me of the days when you'd see people with those utility belts with like 3 different beepers and a phone, and well, this message comes from here. This one I can only use for office work, and this one is with my wife. That's the bat phone, and but now we just have one phone, and that communicates.
Those are the days when you heard the pager go off, and everybody in the restaurant reached for their belt.
Right. We going like that. So, are we in our awkward adolescent stage of co-pilots? I guess is maybe my question.
Yeah, it seems to me we're like racing into this. Of course, not thinking about what's the right experience to create, right? But then again, we're talking about different products and different companies, and everybody's trying to innovate. I think it'll change fast enough. Anyway, we're going to have sort of this awkward teenager stage for a year or two, and it'll settle into what it's going to be next. And hopefully it's better, less complicated.
It definitely will be better. But you know what? Here's the other thing. The way AI is progressing, I mean, this is faster. I think we've gotten used to internet time, right? Internet time, condensed time frames, crazy. AI is exponentially crunching internet time. Mm-hmm. So when you say a year, I bet you in 6 months, someone's going to come up with the bright idea of a co-pilot front end, right? That can fly every Boeing and Airbus jet out there, so to speak, and you just plug in, right? It's an API that plugs into a specific LLM, given an app, and maybe it uses the same big LLM, but behind the scenes, depending on what that co-pilot is. Is it an OpenAI co-pilot? Is it Llama? Is it Anthropic or Claude or what have you, right? And then there's an SLM that's application specific, or an LLM that's application specific that plugs in on top of that gives me my I'm getting a vision of Iron Man here, where I get a boost of a particular app's, know-how over my base Iron Man suit,
I don't know. You just want Jarvis. That's what you want.
Yeah. Well, but so in other words, Jarvis is my co-pilot, right? But Jarvis can plug in to, and Jarvis always has that Jarvis intelligence built in. Mm-hmm. But then Jarvis augments right? With
whatever.
some extra juice from depending on what app I'm in.
So I think the analog to that is, there were lots of, every day, every week, there's more AI announcements. This most recent week was IBM and Dell and a number of other folks. And I can't remember, I think it was IBM, maybe it was Dell. It essentially came out with a platform for managing your LLMs. So maybe
I didn't see
that is. Yeah, it was kind of one of those things thrown into the announcements. And I don't remember what the name of it was, but it made me think of maybe that's the answer is in the corporate environment. Here's the LLMs we're going to use, development using these 5 Copilot testing, et cetera things. And here's the platform for doing that. I don't know if it gives you an interface to get to all of that, but maybe that's the destination is kind of think of LLMs as, well, I have an interface to all those things and let the company plug in the LLMs that we want to use and manage that infrastructure, or third party does that, as opposed to buying 20 of them and we all get to kind of find our way through them.
I think that's, a likely future. I think we also got to think of AI is supposed to make it easier for people, for testers, for developers, for security people, cloud native engineers, platform engineers. We got to, someone should do that user experience and say, okay, how do we make it easy to harness all this stuff for a typical worker? And then also these workers more often than not are not individual, in a vacuum. They're team members.
Exactly.
And so do you have team-enabled Copilot?
Yep.
Right? That says, yes, Mitchell Allen has done this over here, so to be consistent, you should stay with that. Right? And something like that. Because that'll be a nice step up, too, as these get more and more intelligent and, in terms of how a group works, not just an individual. I think that's another leap coming as well.
Yeah, I think that's the next kind of plateau is beyond individual productivity, people collaborating together, whether it's in a Slack kind of open collaboration or it's a development environment. Imagine kind of stepping back up to your computer if you're a software developer, and you could very easily, so where are we on the project today? And it could tell you, well, here's all the things. Alan completed this area and it's all been regression tested and your code's looking good. But it still needs to do these 3 things. But actually, Mike did 2 of those for you. Oh, okay, good. I'll pick up here. Instead of you kind of just figuring out the pieces, right?
I mean, it's kind of like AI-assisted workflows, right? Team workflow. How cool. You could start, think back to when we did VAM in 2005. How cool would it have been to have sort of an AI-assisted team workflow for remediations and
absolutely
and stuff like that? Where, okay, go do those patches, assign that one to Mitch and keep me posted. And, what a great future. It's almost Star Trek-y. Computer.
I think it is kind of where we're headed, which is now we're like, do you trust what it did? So you have to look at everything and maybe you put it into production or put it through the paces to test it. Maybe you don't. But after a while, build up trust in this, right? To say, yeah, it knows how to patch Microsoft servers. So I'm pretty good on if it's going to run a patch routine for me. Okay, I've watched it for 10 times. How many times do I have to babysit it? Okay, good. Go do that. Now, this other thing, I'm not quite so sure, about, building a graph and doing analysis on it this way. Let's kind of work through that together. Okay, good. Yeah, the AI's got that. I like the approach, or I helped decide what approach options I want it to take. Okay, good. And it can come back and tell me, like, this one looks a little different. Would you like to look at some other options? Yeah, I would. Okay, or no, just the same one. That to me is the real assistant, not help me find something. Yes, today copilots are this. Here's some suggested code. Here's some suggested or help me find and look up stuff.
Well, here's some suggested, edits to your code, if you will, or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's it's certainly going to be interesting to watch, and it's definitely going to have its effect on the way we all work, and especially around teams and coding and deployment and DevOps and platform engineering and what have you. There be whales, Captain.
There be whales.
There be whales. Hey, Mitch, I wanted to switch gears a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
So, we're gearing up. We're going to be up in New York for PlatformCon. We're putting on a satellite there with CloudBees and some other folks. This whole platform engine. So I've been spending a lot of time. I did a webinar roundtable this week for PlatformCon. Been talking to a lot of people, obviously, around DevOps and in our industry. And I think we were out at RSA a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I think one of the perceived truths out there is a reason why more organizations aren't more successful in utilizing a DevOps mindset, of DevOps framework, is that it puts too much on the developer's plate. And developers want to code, and when coders are only coding 11 to 20 or 30% of the time, that doesn't work. We want coders coding at least 50% or more of the time. Mm-hmm. And that inherently, that shift left has become shift to the developer. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to refute that. I'm not here to say that that's not the truth in some organizations. But what I am here to say is that really wasn't the intent behind DevOps. Shift left just meant to get to stuff earlier in the development cycle, where it's easier to fix problems, where it's cheaper to fix security bugs, where you can improve quality earlier, which allows you to get out good code faster. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean the developer does everything. And I think for too many people with DevOps, it became a case of let's put it on the developer's plate.
I agree. Well, if you go back to, so if you want to reference the Phoenix Project or Gold Rats, the goal, right? Mm-hmm. It's what is sort of the deadly sin of kind of process engineering and constraint-based management. It's work in progress, right? And it's things that are in a wait state. Yeah. And the whole idea, if you go back to that, take DevOps out of it for a moment, but that's what DevOps is based on. It's all the reason why you shift left or you look left is upstream is where those problems are created, and downstream are where they create delays to go back and fix it, or it creates other issues that are in response to that problem. Well, it could be product quality, could be whatever, manufacturing defect. And so if you take that logic and apply it to DevOps, you say, well, then great. For security, where are the places before we get to test or before we get to CI/CD, where we're going to improve? Think of security as a quality process. How would you improve security? Well, you might go all the way back to the spec. You might go to the design of the architecture. You might go to some of the technology that you're using or platforms that you're using. You might go to tools that you're developing with. And then at some point in that chain is the developer, right? There may be things there too that we can help the developer with. But I think it was just too easy to hand the developer scan results and say, here's vulnerabilities in your code, fix them, and say, now let's just have the developer do more. And to your point, that's not fun. That's toil to them, right? We remember the barking dog problem of intrusion prevention systems. We don't want that happening in development. So my point being is, it's not shift left who, it's shift left how are we doing security, and what changes can we make upstream that improve the quality of security. And it's incremental, right? It's not like one fix is going to make it all, solve all of our security problems. It's an ongoing process.
I agree with you. It is an ongoing process, but I think one of the premises of DevOps and CI/CD and software supply chain, software factory as a place where how and where we develop our software is that we want to ensure quality before deployment. We want to ensure security before deployment. We want to do more before deployment. And that doesn't mean, okay, so we're going to pass to the left side of the factory, and the only people working on the left side of the factory are these developers. Mm-hmm. No, it means moving the security guys to the left side of the factory, getting the testers doing their scripts and coverage on that left side, further left in the factory. The platform engineers, the ops people, the SREs, they're designing these platforms with that in mind. That's where the guardrails are. That's where how the system is engineered. Mm-hmm. That shift left to me. And that, I don't know, I feel like somewhere along the line, maybe someone lost their way there. So some of us have lost our way there.
I don't think this is 100% of it, but I think some of it is a long tail of the DevOps developers will do everything. We don't need operations or security or, that whole mantra where it kind of started. That was one sect, if you will, of kind of people thinking about DevOps, which I know you or I or many people didn't believe that. I think that's not going to happen. Can't believe it's going to be that automated. Developers won't mind getting up in the middle of the night for every little issue. Let me paint a picture for you this way. And, this is something, you and I have explored is following shift left became, well, no, it's also shift right. Oh, no, it's also shift everywhere. So shift left isn't just what DevSecOps is, right? The kind of the model we've come to is in terms of creating software, that is an output. It is the entire SDLC, right? All the way from design and planning through delivering code and your ability to deliver that. And what are all the steps along the way where security is built or improved or incrementally added, made better? That's kind of the software layer. The other part of DevSecOps, which is more on our scene now, is the underlying tool chain and the supply chain of what's going into the process for external code and repositories and package managers, the tool sets that you're using. For example, we're securing the CI/CD platform now. They're using containers and even Kubernetes and things like that to isolate steps along the way. So someone interjects something into a step in the tool chain, it's not the whole thing is corrupted. We can fix that, isolated, et cetera. So to me, DevSecOps is now the entire process of both software and the underlying technology that's used to create it. So kind of think of it as horizontal as well as vertical, and in the tools and software that we use and create. That, I think, is what DevSecOps is now, or that's DevSecOps next. That's what we're moving to.
Absolutely. Speaking of DevOps and DevSecOps next, how are we doing? When can our listeners, viewers, get insights into your next big research report here?
That's a good question. Let's see. I could literally we're in the wild is what I call it when we're out collecting data on our DevOps Next survey. We've already laid down a lot of kind of the ideas that are going to be in this within this report. So we're cranking through, getting a bunch of great responses. So I think we're probably another week or so away from collecting enough data, and then we'll finish writing the report. So I think we're probably 30 days away or so.
Okay.
I would imagine, let's think about the June, kind of end of June, early July, when that's going to be ready. And in parallel, in the background, I'm already working on the DevSecOps Next survey.
Very cool.
And these ideas about what's going to be in that. And then we'll kind of have them overlapped, staggered, with the next one that we'll work on, whether it's observability or testing or whatever that may be. We've got a bunch of ideas of what that can be. Interestingly enough, in parallel, we're also working on an AI and DevOps report, an update to a report that actually Tricenta sponsored in 2022. That's kind of taking that angle of it, and we'll incorporate some of that data into our report, as well as it'll be its own standalone report. So we've got a lot of stuff happening.
Great stuff. Yeah. You heard it here first on DevOps Chat. Hey, Mitchell, that about wraps up what I had today. Anything else?
I think it's great. I would say as we're getting inundated by AI announcements, look a little further down into the articles and look for themes, even if it's about hardware, AI stuff. Look for the software part of it. Look for the DevOps tool part of it, because I'm starting to see more and more of that in these announcements, not just another Copilot to our first discussion. So hopefully that continues the trend. And that's
cool.
it.
All righty. That's going to wrap up this edition of DevOps Chats. We're going to have a volume number sooner or later, but for now, it's just another DevOps Chat. I'm Alan Shimel.
And this is Mitch Ashley.
And you just listened to another
episode of DevOps Chat.